Hi, everybody. I'm Tanya Walker, and I want to thank you so much for being with me today on One Day to Love. My guest today is Dr. Nadine Macaluso. Nadine was married to somebody you might be somewhat familiar with from a book called The Wolf of Wall Street and that movie of the same name. His name was Jordan Belfort. That was her husband. And she learned a lot about trauma bond relationships. And she's going to talk to us about that today. Trauma is something that has been brought up in a lot of psychological circles these days, in a lot of books and movies and documentaries. But a lot of times they're referring to child trauma, something that can affect children way later in their lives. And most of us who've had any experience like that want to make sure that we don't pass that on to our children. But this is a little bit different. This is about how some people's significant others are actually pathological and ways we can keep out of relationships like that, ways we can acknowledge that that's what we have, or ways to recognize when one might be forming. So don't miss this one. Well, trauma has become a hot button issue in psychology all over the place. And I know a lot of people that have done films about it. And usually it's about trauma that happened in someone's life as a child. And they want to make sure that it doesn't affect their children today. But in your book, you're talking about our relationships now, like women's relationships these days, like since
Correct.
since this became a thing,
Correct.
you
For
know.
sure. Yes.
And so when you were married to Jordan Belfort,
Yeah.
I know it was I mean, they made a movie about it. I know that that was probably over dramatized, but a lot of those things probably really happened and it was horrible. And you somehow managed to live through it and thrive through it. But then you wanted to become a therapist and you did. I mean, that was such an inspiration. I mean, in a terrible way, something really bad created something really great.
Yeah.
And now your office is flooded with women who need your help.
Yes. That's all true. All very true. I mean, you're right. A lot of when we first heard the word trauma, it was people trying to work through their own generational trauma from their childhood. And
Right.
that really was the first generation of us as even therapists talking about trauma. And then as the word has evolved, right, as people evolve, now we're talking about trauma within love. And it's kind of a paradoxical thing, as young girls, we don't think that our love is going to involve a lot of trauma.
What I noticed though is that you said a lot of things that people um like you suggest that we take this personality test, which I did.
Yes.
And it seemed like good qualities in a woman and a wife
Yes.
could actually lead to these disastrous relationships. If you are overly conscientious, if you're overly understanding, if you're kind and considerate, if you want to take care of someone and make sure their needs are met, if you want to be a good wife,
Yeah.
it seems like that you could set yourself up for being in a really t- terrible situation.
Yeah. And what had happened was that my when I was in my marriage, I knew when my life was out of control. So I put my ass in therapy, right? Because I was like, this is crazy. And so then I left him, went back to school at 39 to be a therapist. And what was happening was all these smart, kind, beautiful women were coming into my office, trauma bonded, either being betrayed, abused, lied to. And I was just like, we have a problem. So being the true academic that I am, I went back to the research and I read a great book. in 2019 called Women Who Love Psychopaths, as I mention a lot in my book. And once she explained this whole thing that women who score high in agreeableness and conscientiousness are perfect prey for these people, and those personality traits get weaponized, I was just like, hallelujah. Nobody had ever said that to me.
No, that's the first time I ever read it was in your book.
Yeah,
And and I was like, "Well, golly, these are the things that
that we're
you're
uh,
trying to be those things in your marriage."
yes, yes, and we're trying to be those things because we're also just good people,
Mhm.
and we're assuming that the people that we fall in love with have a moral compass,
Right,
right?
right.
And then when they don't, and we're left with these nice traits that aren't bad. If a woman came to me with these traits, I would never try to therapize her out of them, right? I wouldn't be like, oh, you're too loyal, or you're too organized, or you're too disciplined. But in the hands of the wrong people, they get fully weaponized, and that hence we get into trouble.
I thought some of the some of the things you talk about are things that I had in my marriage.
Yeah.
The love bombing, where the person does everything you could ever possibly imagine that they could possibly do for you, and you're just, like, so blown away, and you're just head over heels because here comes the flowers, here come the presents, here comes the car, here comes
Yeah.
the calls, here comes the vacations. I mean, how could you not fall in love with this person?
But you're not.
And then in your book, you talk about how that stops and it actually turns into something really bad. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So what happens is when you first meet this person, they appear like your Prince Charming,
Mm.
right? And so they appear generous, kind, and helpful, and loving, and warm, and obsessed with you. And that feels great, right? And it's everything that every Disney movie or romance movie has told us we should expect or long to have. And so you're like, oh, I finally got this. And then over time, the mask starts to fall. Prince Charming is no longer Prince Charming, and he becomes as I say, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or we could say, what's that new movie? Dirty John. Prince Charming becomes Dirty John. And you notice this through words not matching actions. They get very controlling, like, you don't need to work, or don't hang out with those people, or don't dress like that, or they become disparaging and insulting. And they start to behave in ways that don't match what they initially presented. And you're just totally confused.
So when that happens, should you say something?
I think you can say something, but if you say something to someone who's not capable of hearing you or not capable of having empathy, it doesn't matter. But you're still longing for the love bombing Romeo because you know he was there. Where did he go? He's got
My
to come back.
my personal problem is that I wonder what I did to cause it. And
Oh,
I think there's a lot of women that probably do that. They probably think, "What did I do to make him change? Why was 2 weeks ago so great and then now it's not, and, what did I do wrong?"
yeah. And
Isn't that sort of the normal train of
yeah,
thought?
yeah, I think if you're a reflective, pro-social person, you're always thinking, I could do better.
Mhm.
But you did nothing, as my book demonstrates, right? We did nothing to make him act like that. He was always like that. He just hid it from us on purpose. And that's the manipulation, that they're hiding who they really are or what they really stand for. And then we get blindsided by it, but it's never the woman's fault. And that's the main point of my book, is I destigmatize the victim. It is never your fault that somebody abuses you or lies to you or betrays you.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah. I like how you go with some of your patients, I'm sure the names are changed and all
Of
that.
course.
But, the stories are um, helpful, really helpful, and they explain and illustrate your points very well, of course.
Thank you.
Um, the thing that I I mean, I was married for 20 years, so when you go to therapy, leaving is never an option, right? You're always trying to figure out how to make this work. What do I need to do and what do they need to do? And how am I feeling? And here's this page of feelings. You can explain your feeling. I've been through all these things, and you explain what you're feeling, how this makes you feel. You do the reflective listening. I think I heard you say blah, blah,
Right.
blah. Is that right? Yes, yes, yes. I mean, we have
Yes.
all, but in this book, you're saying, "Get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Run like hell. There you go,
Yeah.
right here. This is the book right here, everybody. You
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
read the book."
Well,
Because
yeah,
there's
exactly.
no hope, right?
Well, ironically, hope is the hook, right? Because of the love bombing, you think they're going to go back to that. That was real. No, we can capture that again. So hope is the hook, and that's the hard part, especially if you're a hopeful person. My name actually means hope. Nadine means hope.
Mm.
So I am a very hopeful person. Um, but most therapists, and nothing against therapists because I didn't understand it, so I really researched it, don't get it. Most good couple therapists, right? They're trying to get connect, communicate, but you cannot apply these things with a pathological partner when you're in a trauma bond. And then you get gaslit again in therapy.
Right. What am I doing wrong?
Must
What
be again.
Right, right, right. Well, we've all been taught that the only person we can change is ourselves.
Right,
So we turn ourselves inside out to try to fix this thing, you
right.
know.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to say it. I've never heard that. Thank you for saying that. Turn ourselves
True.
inside out. Yeah.
Yeah, really
I
do.
I might post about that. I gotta say it. I'm writing it down inside out.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're
Um,
right. You're right.
when I listened to what you said about complex PTSD, I really related to that too.
Tell me.
Everybody knows what PTSD is as it relates to war and Vietnam and those horrible places that these very brave people come back from, and how their things will trigger them, or they'll flinch if they hear a loud noise or if a firework goes off. I mean, they get nervous. They hear a pop from a gun. It's like, how is it that that relates to people in a trauma bond
Yeah,
situation?
so PTSD, you're right, was initially about war veterans, but complex PTSD, the diagnosis implies that it's relational trauma.
Mhm.
So again, like you're saying, we first really use that term for people who have experienced relational trauma, that they have complex PTSD. And because I'm a somatic psychotherapist, I'm very into trauma. And so I just took that complex PTSD lens that we know for relational trauma between parent and child and kind of moved it to relational trauma between adult to adult. And so what happens is that trauma is any experience that overwhelms us and that wounds us to the point that we don't have any more resources. And this relationship, a trauma bond, is outside the realm of normalcy, right? So trauma is anything that's outside the realm of normalcy, a hurricane, a this, a tsunami, a car crash, right? And so, but a trauma bond, the experience in it are outside the realm of normalcy. And so we get relational trauma symptoms from that.
But don't you think that people that have had um, families that erupted in anger, that argued, or their parents argued, or um, there was tension in the house, that kind of thing, that those types of people might think that this is normal, that
Oh,
it's not outside their realm of reality, or what you think is normal.
for sure. And that's why I break the personality patterns into three types, right? I didn't have a crazy, toxic, dysfunctional home. My mother left my father when I was very young. We had a very calm, peaceful home where we talked about feelings, where it wasn't dramatic. So for me, it was different, but there are plenty of women or people who have dramatic homes, right? Dramatic and erratic homes. So then they think family, the root word familiar, this is normal. And then there are some women who don't have that, but maybe they have more of a dependent personality. So, yes, anybody and everybody can fall for them or be in it, but it's good to know what personality traits, how and why you got there so that you never go there again.
Mhm. Mhm.
But for
So
sure,
should somebody read your book and look for what they know they're like to be careful when they
yeah,
meet some.
yeah, I think that you should understand yourself. I mean, in general, I'm a therapist, so my big mission is know thyself, right? And so learn about your traits, learn about your attachment patterns, learn about these sorts of relationships. Because when you think about it, we go to school, we learn reading, writing, arithmetic. Why don't we learn the fourth R, relationships? They are the foundation of our lives.
Mhm.
They are
That
what
would be
makes life,
nice.
right? Make life worth living. So why not teach this as well,
Yeah, it would be great. It would be
right?
great. But that's not what they do. They also don't teach them that there's a checkbook, that if you
Right.
get a credit card, you have to pay it every
Exactly.
month.
Exactly. No, you're so true. So, you know,
I'm
so
like, "What do you mean you didn't pay the credit card?" "Well, I didn't have the money." "Well, did you call them and tell them you didn't have the money?" "Is there a number I can call?" "Yeah, there's a number you can call. It's on the back of the card. You call them and you tell them you'll give them $5 a month." It's like they don't teach them any of that stuff, which
right,
I just cannot understand. I
right.
cannot understand.
That's all part of that.
Yeah. Um, so do women ever perpetuate trauma bonds?
For sure. For
So
sure.
there's women that are the same as men.
For sure. And, and I wrote my book specifically for women only because the research that I've read and studied, what I've experienced in my room was mostly women, and we live in a patriarchal culture where men are certainly more entitled, and they just end up being the ones that perpetuate the abuse more. I wish it wasn't that way. I am not against
Yeah.
men. I'm married for 25 years. I have an amazing son and 4 amazing son-in-laws now. I have so many kids, I don't know, but 4 amazing son-in-laws. So, and they're very different because I think this younger generation is becoming different.
You think they're learning some things that we didn't learn?
I think so. I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd like that.
Me too.
There's so much divorce in the world, and it would be nice if there wasn't. And it would be nice if people could learn how to handle these situations. And that's why everybody that I know has been to, I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't been to a marriage counselor. Um,
Right.
but what this is different.
Yeah.
And what bothers me about it is that it would be really nice if if because I'm single now that my husband's gone, he
Yeah.
died.
Sorry.
Um, it would, yeah, it's awful. um, but if somebody comes along and they do all those things that I love that he did, and because I had actually had that happen one time, and but then it changed and I didn't understand it. I
Right.
didn't know what I did wrong. Um, but I'm just wondering, how does that mean that anytime somebody does all these really great things for you at the beginning of a relationship and you're so excited,
Um,
you feel like you've met the right person, and then are they all gonna change, or does that mean they're trying too hard, or what is that? What should you
I
say to yourself?
I think that you have to look at my daughter was funny when she first met her current husband, who was a wonderful man. She said, "Mom, it's weird. It's not so crazy. It's not so intense, but I just love him." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"That's okay. It doesn't have
That's
to be this fast paced, intense, over the top, monopolizing your time, wanting to see you all the time, obsessed with you. You're a soulmate in 2 weeks. flowers, jewelry. That's first of all, it's not sustainable. And I think we've been fed this myth of romantic love. That's what it is. We need more shows where like it goes like slow and steady. You
That
know,
would be help
that
that
would
would be
be
helpful.
helpful because as you know, being an actress, like we take in images. You know, they're very powerful. And so, no, of course, just because somebody's nice to you, but I have this saying, if it feels too good to be true, it might be. And for women or people who ever listening to this to trust their gut. You know, there were plenty of signs, especially as a young girl, that I ignored. You know, don't ignore those signs. Get curious, ask questions, go deeper. And don't just think that because somebody is over the top nice to you in the beginning when it's easy to be, right? That means that they're the person for you.
What I noticed also was in your stories when the person comes back, um, your patients in these 3 cases, seem to have been able to, find a way to get back together with these people, and then what happened?
Right. It went downhill.
Right. Again.
It went downhill. False promises, lies, all sorts of things. And, you know, and listen, here's the bottom line. We all want to be loved. We're social beings. We're built for connection. It's a natural human instinct and it does feel good. But you have to not just go on feelings, you have to go on facts.
Right. Yeah. Well, I thought it was really profound. I really, um, because I've had a lot of experience and a lot of education, um, this is one area that I really didn't have any education in. So I think your book is really going to help an awful lot of people. The
Yeah.
thing that I also wanted to touch on today is that when a person does decide, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Um, I need to be careful. I've been told if I leave, there could be threats of violence, there could be threats of pennilessness, there could be threats of, you'll you won't make it. Um, I'll take the kids.
Right.
I'll leave you penniless.
Yeah.
Um, there's all kinds of things like that. And so what do you think is like the process by which a person can leave safely?
Yeah. Once you decide internally that you want to leave safely, you can never tell them.
Okay.
It's now you have to wear the mask. And then
Mhm.
you have to pretend, which is hard. And then behind the scenes, you have to get an attorney if you're married, or really tell close people to you that you're planning on leaving. You need to get credit cards in your name, right? You need to, maybe you don't have money. I just did a video about this. Go to Target, go to Walmart, go to all these places and get, what do you give those cards? Those like gift cards.
Yeah.
Take out cash
Right, right.
on the gift card so they can't be tracked. I mean, you have to secure all your documents. You know, if you're not married, make sure you wipe out anything that they could use against you on social media, right? Really be strategic and methodical and let people know you're leaving. Get a therapist that's informed in this. If you're getting divorced, get an attorney that's informed in this and surround yourself almost with like a wraparound team because when you make that decision to leave, you need to be resourced
Mhm.
relationally, emotionally, physically, materialistically, right? Financially, and then you can do it.
Have
It's
you seen people do this successfully?
oh, so many times.
Yeah.
So many times. And it's bumpy and it's awkward and it's weird and it's not a straight line. But yeah, we're stronger than we know.
What do you do with the kids that have been put through this and seen these things, and how do you help them?
The way I did it was when my children were young, they were 3 and 5, about to be 4 and 6. So they were young. And their dad did end up going to jail, and I was always very developmentally appropriate with my children the way I spoke about them, but I didn't disparage their dad. So, yeah, your dad wasn't nice to me. He broke the law. He's going to jail, right? But I wasn't like, your dad's an asshole. He's a, no, but just because luckily I did that because there was a movie made. So, right, it all came out. And
Long time later, though.
yeah,
Long
but like it's important to be honest with them to a point. And listen, I got very lucky because my ex got arrested, so the power balance shifted.
Yeah, you didn't have to worry about him coming to shoot you in the head
Yeah,
or
or
anyone
taking the
else do
kids,
it.
right,
Mhm,
or taking the kids. So I always say this, my patients are not as lucky.
mhm,
So I help them in that way that I can.
mhm.
And it's a challenge. It's not easy, but it can be done. Again, getting the right divorce attorney, having the right people around you. And
There are laws, though, that you can't take the kids out of state, you can't
yes, correct.
go I mean, I don't know if that applies when you're not divorced yet. I mean, maybe you're allowed to take the kids in some states on vacation and then call and say you're leaving. I don't know. I mean, it's just a real tragic situation to be in.
Yeah, and there are people out there, there are helpers, like Mr. Rogers says. Pardon him, but look for the helpers. They're there.
Yeah,
They're
okay.
there. Yeah, look for them. They're experts in all this.
If kids learn that daddy can be really rude to mommy, daddy can talk back to mommy, daddy can say mean things to mommy, um, daddy can disrespect mommy.
Right.
As a teenager's mother or a 20 something's mother, you know, or a 12-year-old's mother, what do you how do you handle that? What do you say? Without disparaging the man,
Yeah.
what can you
Well,
say?
sometimes what happens is when, especially the oldest child witnesses that, it's learned behavior. And sometimes what happens tragically is when the woman leaves the man, the child then starts to do it to the mother.
Ah,
I've seen that happen a lot, unfortunately. And that's where you got to like rewire and reorganize the child's brain, and also what I said to my children, they didn't like this, but they still make fun of me. I was like, you know what? I learned a lot of new things. I'm going to set boundaries. They were like, we hate boundaries. I said, no, I'm not going to let your dad do it to me anymore. I'm not going to let the dog do it. I'm not going to let you do it. I'm learning about boundaries and I have boundaries. And now my daughter's a therapist, so she laughs and says, I get it now, you boundaries, but she didn't like it.
of course not.
Yeah.
No. Well, nobody likes boundaries, but
Except for the people that are enforcing
that are mhm,
it.
yeah, yeah. I had a bunch of other questions. I want to make sure I got everything.
Sure, take your time.
Um, oh, pathological. You said something about pathological lovers, and um, I was like, "Whoa!" That sounds so bad. That sounds so like we should know whether we're going to end up with a pathological. What's the definition of a pathological
So
lover?
what I say is a pathological lover is someone who will use, harm, exploit, and betray anybody they love to get their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status. Right? So to me, anybody who would do that is mentally unwell, and pathological means mentally unwell.
Okay, okay.
Because I wouldn't do that. Would you do that?
No. No,
No,
course.
no. Right.
Not unless it was honest.
Right, right.
If it's honest, if I say, "Well, I'd like this, 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 and that," and they go, "Okay, I'd like this, 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 and that," and we do that for one another, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
But I think if
You're
you're doing
manipulating
something
somebody,
right,
right?
if
Gaslighting them, yes.
you're being not true to yourself and you're putting on a show in order to get something, I have to get paid a lot of money and do that on TV. I don't do that in real life.
Right,
Too hard, too hard, um,
right.
for me anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good thing.
yeah, I think it's just really, important for people to know that these people are out there, but it's not doesn't have to be a Snidely Whiplash kind of, mustache twirling person. It can be a very charming, very handsome, very sweet, very educated, very successful,
That's
nice person who can end up being one of these people. So, I don't want to be negative or walk into something with that, but how do you tell, right? How can you tell? How soon should you know?
that's a great question. So I get very excited lately because a lot of my patients who now are going back out to date or new people who have read my book or see me on social media will be like, you know what? I fell for them, but it only took me 4 months this time. And I'm like, yes, it only took me
to,
4 months.
to see it, to see it.
Well, because they just notice, like, oh, they're going to the bar too much, or words aren't matching actions, or they're noticing their gut reaction to them. And they're seeing it, they're catching it sooner because they know the signs. The people aren't respecting their boundaries, you know, they're saying all their exes were the worst people in the world. And so they're catching the signs. I have a pathological lover checklist in my book and on my website, right? So
I haven't
anybody,
looked at your website. I haven't seen your website. What's
yeah,
your website? Tell me what your website.
Dr. Nay, NAE.com. And I have all the assessments on my website. Trauma bonds assessment, pathological lover, personality trait, so many. I can't even think.
Everybody, make sure you pay attention to that. You got to look that up. That's really important. It's
Yeah,
very,
and
very,
it's
very
like, boom, you take it. So if you think you're in a trauma bond, and if your relationship is 11 out of 14, you got a problem.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the whole book. The whole reason I wrote the book was to educate women, validate, and men too. I'm not going to take that away. And also destigmatize this for women. I am so sick of everybody saying, why does she stay instead of why does he do that? Which is a great book by Lindsay Bancroft, which I talk about in my book. But like, there's a lot of deep psychological reasons why people stay. And they're just people that want to be loved.
They also don't wanna break up a home.
That's
They
right.
also they also know that the person that has said that they could do all these various things to them could, in fact, do all of these various things to them. Um,
That's right.
they feel like they might be able to manage it better that close with the kid
Exactly.
than
Especially with
legally,
kids. Yeah.
and then who knows what could happen. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I know of, that I can relate to, that you put up with things, because you are afraid not to. You're afraid that if you don't do that, it could be worse.
I mean, fear is a great motivator,
Uh-huh.
and family and wanting to keep the family unit together.
And also you love the person. I
Right.
mean, that's the thing that's really stupid. Um, you
Or
actually
you do, or you think you do, or you think you do, right? Or you think you do.
yeah,
You realize this is not love.
well, or maybe it's both at the same time.
Yeah,
I think you can have a love-hate situation in life, um, where you really, really love the person, but you hate X, Y, and Z about their behavior, you know? Um, if you're with a person that's bipolar, for instance, you can love it when they're in one place, but not love it when they're in the other place, or
that's right.
um,
That's right.
various things like that. It's hard, it's hard when you really get to know somebody and you find out later that they've got this or that,
Yes.
um, and you want to stand by them. Like when you said that loyalty, you're like, I stood in front of God and everybody else, and I said I was going to stay. Um,
Yeah, and it's beautiful to be loyal, but not when it gets weaponized against you.
well, that's the thing that I had a little bit of this in my marriage, a little bit, and so But I still, was devastated when I found out he was sick, and I didn't want to leave because I wanted to take care of him. I felt badly.
Yeah.
But we'd had a lot of issues too. And I think what happens if you stay a long time is you can lose your self-esteem, or you can lose your get up and go kind of got up and left. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Sometimes I'm just tired.
Yeah.
My sometimes my get up and go got up and gone, and I think maybe that's I'm just starting to get it back, and
Good.
it's been 5 years, because you go through a lot.
Yes. Yes. A
It's
lot.
exhausting. It can be really exhausting.
Oh, it's emotionally and physically draining for sure.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. And then, but we work through so much stuff all the time. Um, and his heart was so good, really, really good. I mean, everybody knows that. Um, but there's some people that I've known that their hearts aren't so good.
Correct.
And those are the ones that I just hope people watch out for, and I hope they look at your book and see things that they can
Right.
relate to, that can keep them from having this horrible experience, because it can be very dangerous.
It can be very
I mean,
dangerous.
we both have a friend that we know that's going through something that's just tragic. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like, who is this person? I mean,
Not
that can be something you just can't believe. It's like, oh my gosh.
That's right. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Who is
Yep.
this person?
Yep.
So we really need to pay attention, and I've never heard it talked about in the sense that you did. I've heard it talked about in the sense of, there was a wonderful movie, that I saw that was about, Daryl Hammond, I think, from Saturday Night Live. Wasn't he on that show? It was a wonderful documentary, and it was about this kind of mental illness, this kind of situation. Joey Pantoliano has a thing called, No Kidding, Me Too, which is about mental illness. Maurice Bernard is on General Hospital. He has a talk show that he does like this one,
Yeah.
on mental illness. There's a lot of people that are starting to realize that there's a lot of mental illness in the world,
Mhm.
and people have opportunities to do something about it,
Yes.
learn something about it, and talk about it, and get healed from it and move forward.
That's
Um,
very
and
possible.
that's why it was so important to me to get you on the show today, because I think what you wrote was so, so good, and I loved listening to it too. I read the book.
Yeah.
I'm almost finished with it. I'm up to the place where, um, I'm in the post-traumatic growth portion.
Oh, good, good.
Yes,
Yes.
that's where I'm at. So I'm in and I've already gotten a lot. Everybody see this, it's important. Make sure you get this book.
Mhm.
Um, it was just, I was happy that I was doing some of the post-traumatic growth stuff, and
Mhm.
that I was able to talk about it with my kids and my family. Uh,
Yeah.
there's I don't think there's any family that has none of this, you know what I'm
No,
saying? I don't know.
exactly. And if they say it, they're lying.
I know, I know. Well, thank you so much for this time and everything. And
Oh, my pleasure.
are you enjoying being an author, and have this
Woo!
your
It's
first book?
Yeah, it's my first book. I don't know if I'll do it again, but it's almost took the life out of me because writing about dark stuff, it was hard
Yeah.
stuff, mixing all the research in with the stories. But it's so fulfilling to have people every day reach out to me and say, thank you for seeing me, thank you for validating me, thank you for explaining things I couldn't explain. So it's well worth it. But I'm enjoying it, but it's just like anything that's good, it's a lot of work. But my kids are gone, and what else am I gonna do all day? I can't play tennis and golf and have lunch. That's just not who I am.
It's not enough. It's not
Not
enough.
for me.
Doesn't
So
sound too bad. Doesn't sound too bad.
but I just feel very blessed that I get to do the work that I do and that, I always say that I wrote this book, but it came from something bigger than me, like, it just came through me,
Hmm.
and I fully believe that, and this is, I guess, what I've, been meant to do. At 56, I finally hit my stride, so for anybody listening who's wondering, I went back to school at 39, there's life after 35, I just want to tell you that.
Yeah, there's life after 60.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm grateful for it, and I just hope to continue to spread the message so that, I say I'm trying to save one heart at a time.
Well, you're doing it. You're
Oh,
doing
thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being with us
Of
today.
course. In
Yes.
spite of my cold, sorry for this.
By your cold, that's right. She didn't wanna come on because she didn't feel well, and I was all ready to go, so I'm really grateful that you could do.
Yeah, I did. I did. Oh,
Okay.
so good.